Hey guys, welcome back. Alright, so in this video what we want to do is start implementing React, and React uses a JSX language, so you need an actual editor that can support JSX. Sublime is a free editor for evaluation purposes. It's what I'm using for this tutorial, and you're welcome to download a copy or whatever. So I would suggest that you do that because there's really no way to write JSX code easily without one of these editors. Just to give you an idea on how this works, JSX is really just JavaScript, but it's a certain type of syntax that was created by Facebook, so it makes it easier to visualize JavaScript because JavaScript can be really difficult and ugly to look at. It's very XML-like, so you pretty much create these reusable components in this JSX format. The JSX transpiler will then take that code and then turn it into raw JavaScript code. And then what you render to the actual user is going to be that raw JavaScript code that gets exported. But during your development process, you do everything in JSX, and you bring in the JSX compiler. So that is actually what we did in our master page. From the previous video, you have React min right here, and then after that we have the JSX transformer. So normally in a production environment you do not want to have this JSX transformer because it is a slow process to be able to take the JSX code and then turn it into JavaScript so that React can read it. Once you have it compiled, any sort of production site, you would have just the regular raw JavaScript down here, which communicates with React, and it'll be quick and fast and everything. But JSX is an absolute must. I actually hated it at first because I felt like I didn't need to learn a higher level abstraction to be able to write JavaScript. But you really do, and you should really just kind of get over it and learn it, honestly, because it took me like 3 attempts before I finally said, you know what, I'll go ahead and give it a shot, like a real shot. And once I did, I'm really glad I did. And all the Facebook guys were saying, you know, just stick with it and all that stuff. And anyway, I agree with them, and from experience, I think it is really easy to work with. All right, so if you guys remember from the main master page, I have a navigation at the top. And what I want to be able to happen is I want when they click on the navigation item to add an article, that is where it's actually going to add the post. So what I did is I created an on-click event for the anchor tag to say, really it says add. So this should be like add article. We'll call that add article, or you know what, we'll not even call it article, it's stupid. So we'll say add post, and the site's called new post anyway, so add post event is what we'll call this. So that'll get fired anytime they add that and or click that. And what I wanted to do is I actually want to pop up a modal and then have the modal be the form that they fill out, which then gets submitted to the API through an AJAX call. So what we need to do is go ahead and create our React file, and I'm going to do that like I said, using this this text editor here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as I'm in the wrong file. And we're going to call this navreact.jsx. And the reason why is because this specifically is going to be functionality that works with the navigation. So really the master page will bring this in. So every page, no matter where you are in the website, you'll be able to just navigate to the top and be able to contribute, add article. That'll say add post here in just a moment. Alright, so let's go ahead and create our actual function, which is which gets fired. So we'll say add post event. I think that's what I called it. Yeah, add post event. So we're creating that function here. Alright, now what I add in this function, this is pure JavaScript. This has nothing to do with JSX. But what we're doing is we're creating an event that our modal is going to subscribe to, so that it will listen for this this event that gets fired anytime you click add post event, or anytime this function gets fired. It's going to notify this subscriber, and the React component is going to actually be the subscriber. that listens for this event. So we'll create our first React component, which we're going to call add post. We'll say react.create class. Now the first thing that it gets called is get initial state, and this is always called just one time. And everything is going to be a function. Get initial state is responsible for setting the state for anything, any sort of data that could change the DOM. And what we're going to have in here is just show modal. So modal can change. Right now it's going to be set to none, and this will make sense in just a moment, but we want that value to be none by default. Component did mount is another function that gets called one time. As soon as the actual component has a DOM object and it's considered as part of the DOM, then this method will be fired. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to create a variable called self, and we're going to assign it the this object, and then we need to say document.add event listener. And then this is where we go ahead and we add this name of the event that we had just created above. And then we'll say function, and then we pass in the actual event object. So when that happens, so what this is doing is it's telling React to listen to this event, and this event will get fired when they click the button and it calls this function. So then it's going to say self.show modal, and this is what we're going to actually define here in just a moment. And I also want to say false here. Alright, now let's go ahead and create our show modal function that we just described. And then all we're doing inside of this method is we're actually changing the state of the component. So we'll say this.setState, and then we'll turn show modal, and we're going to change that value from none to inherit. And if this makes any sense to you, those are actually just CSS values that I want to add to the modal. So by default the modal is display none. When we click the button to add the post, it'll display the modal by changing the CSS from display none to display inherit. So that's what's going on there. Now we also need a function for closing the modal once it's up. So we'll go ahead and add that. And then once again, this is just changing the state of the component again, except this time it'll be show modal, and then it'll go back to none. Now we're going to go ahead and create a function for add post, and this is what's going to be responsible for sending our AJAX call and everything. And there needs to be a comma there. That'll trip you up. And once again, we need to create a variable self equals this. Now, because I'm dealing with dates, I need to go ahead and, you know what? Should be variable date equals new date. So this is just a JavaScript date object, because this is all plain JavaScript that's occurring inside of this. And then I want to say date equals date.to ISO string. And what this is, because Django, my Django setup has the date format of year, month, day. So 4-letter year, 2-month date, or month, 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day in that format. And this is telling JavaScript to instantiate a data object and then change it to that format. Now we need to go ahead and create an actual JavaScript object, which is going to be our actual data that is inside the modal for when these users add a new post. So we'll say variable send data, and I'm going to pass an empty author object. Now if you remember from the previous video, we actually don't grab the author from the request, but I do need to send it, otherwise it could cause a problem to my serializer, because it does expect the author to be there. Even if it's blank, that's fine, but it needs to be there. Now I'm going to be adding some div tags for some input elements that we're going to be collecting information. So we'll say add post modal tags. So this will be a div of an input element that we'll define here in just a moment. But we're using just basic jQuery to grab the value of this this input that the user is going to add for the tags. The title, once again, is going to be the same way. I grab this. I'm building this verb. I'm creating the verbose long name because I don't want any sort of naming conflicts. Since this page is going to, or this functionality is going to be on every single page of the document, so I want to make sure that the div tag for this modal is very descriptive, and that preferably doesn't have any sort of, like I said, naming clash down the road. And if this doesn't make sense, then I think you'll understand once you see it in action. So they're long div names. Normally I wouldn't do that, but anyway. This will be add news modal article. And then finally, data is going to be the data object that we just instantiated. So that's our JavaScript object that we're going to be passing across the wire through our AJAX call. And then now we're going to go ahead and define that actual AJAX call using jQuery. Now this is where we're actually going to be adding the URL that I was telling you about. And the way Django REST Framework works is that it's automatically going to allow the post member to the API if you're the actual super user to the site or admin user. So it's not going to allow any other posts to go through for this site, but that's already set up for us. So let's go ahead and add the URL where that post is going to occur. So it's going to be post API and then just /. We need a comma there. Data type is going to be JSON. Method is going to be post, and this is all standard jQuery stuff for sending AJAX. Data that we're going to pass to it is actually our send data object that we just created. And then we define the success method. And we pass in the data that gets returned. Now, by default, Django REST Framework will actually send back the serialized data that gets added to the database. So I can go ahead and I can say variable ID equals data.id, and this will be the ID of the actual post that gets added to the database. So then I can just do a simple redirect. So I can say window.location.href equals this would just be a hard link to, I can say plus ID plus, because remember Django always puts the / on the end. So all I'm doing is I'm simply redirecting to the new post that was just created for the user. Now if there's an error, I'm going to call a separate function. This would be actually our status error, and then I'll just log the error to the console so that we can try to debug what the problem may be. And let me just say this URL here. Oh hell! All right. And this will say .bind this. And then now finally, every component needs to have a render function. And then the render function needs to actually have a return statement, and this is going to be actual HTML markup that gets created in the virtual DOM. And all we're simply going to do is just have it return inside a div, and then the div is going to have a modal. And this is going to be an actual add post modal. So this is going to be another React component that we're going to be defining in just a moment. I want to be able to pass in custom actions to this modal. So in order to make this modal as reusable as possible, actually I don't need those commas there. I'm going to create a bunch of different variables that this modal will be able to accept in order to build something custom. And really this title should be custom as well, but for right now I'm not going to worry about it. I'll even add a style object so that we can add that to the modal. Now, so this makes more sense. Let's go ahead and create the actual modal that we're referencing here. So this is going to be a new React element. And we'll say add post modal. And just like we did before, we're going to say create class. Alright, so we're going to be creating this reusable modal. And this modal is going to be very simple, or this component. It's just going to have the one render function. Now this is actually, like I said, it's a mandatory thing anytime you're creating a component in React, is you have to have a render function, which is going to call a return. And now I already have this this mapped out here, but let me go ahead and I want to copy all this code here so I don't screw this up on the video. Now, let me say add. Let's change that. So add post modal. So what we've described here is a actual div. It's using Bootstrap to display the modal. And then here are the custom properties that we passed in. So this.props.title is going to be this title right here. So this is what we passed to it. So add a new post. So that'll get displayed right here. And then this.props.body is right here. But now you'll notice that we have body equals add post body, and there's no post body. What these squiggly lines here inside your actual JSX component here, this what looks like normal HTML/XML type of thing. These are actual JavaScript variables that aren't defined, but what we would do is we would actually define those right here. So I'll say like variable style equals, and then I can go ahead and pass an actual object to this modal to change the functionality of like maybe where it sits and things like that. So what I'll probably do is something like this. So I'll change the display. And we want this, obviously, the style, because the display is being set by the state. So remember, when this thing first loads, this is going to be display none. But when they click it, it changes it to display inherit. So this definitely has to be passed to the modal component. And you see it's done through these squiggly lines, which means pass the JavaScript object to this modal, and then it ends up using it. And the way it uses it, as you can see, it takes and applies that property from its parent, this.props.style, to the style tag. This takes some getting used to. If you've never seen this in React, this is React specific stuff, JSX specific, and entire tutorial series exist on it. In fact, I have a few on my own, but this is really not the purpose of the video, but just giving you kind of a background in case you've never seen it before. Alright, now let's go ahead and create our close variable, and if you remember, we're referencing it here, so I'll go ahead and underneath my style variable I'll add my close variable, And then the way this works is this is saying on click, it's saying this.close modal. So it can then add that down here. So we'll say this.props.close. And all it is a button that when you click it, it fires the event to close the modal and change the state back to none so that the modal disappears. All right, now this next part is a little bit larger, but we're creating the actual body of the element. So we're going to say we called it add post body. Alright, so what this thing is going to display, it's actually going to display all this this JSX code, which is very similar to XML. And what we have here is now we're making reference of those actual input elements that I was telling you about before. It's using the class name form control because that's a Bootstrap specific thing. The IDs here we had used to build our Ajax data object up here. So like add post modal tags, that's where we're adding it now. So add post modal title, here's add post modal tag. So that's where we're using what we just defined. And then I want the button to say add post, and it's going to fire the event add post, which we defined here. All right. All right, so it looks pretty good. All right, so now at the bottom of the file, we need to do the final thing with React. We need to say React.render add post, which is the element that we just described up here. And then we're assigning it to an ID on the template that we expect to be there, which it's probably not there. So let's go ahead and add that to our actual template. And it's actually going to go right here. This doesn't need to be there. Alright, so let me go ahead and update all this stuff. Now inside our template, we need to go ahead and load the JSX code that we're going to be creating. We're going to be adding a type parameter here. This is very important, and it needs to say text JSX, because what this JSX transformer is, it'll look for any script includes that have a JSX on them, and then it's going to take that code and then turn it to regular JavaScript. If you remember what we called this nav React JSX. So I'm going to upload all this information. Let's make sure everything's loading correctly. So if I go down to the bottom, I want to make sure, so we have our nav React JSX here. And it's going to automatically try to download that because the browser doesn't even know how to render it. Your JSX transformer handles that for you. So it is being loaded correctly. So if we go over to contribute, we say add post. Let's see if we get some sort of error message here. Now the best thing to do whenever you're trying to debug this kind of stuff is if you're using Chrome, you want to go to your console and it'll tell you any sort of errors that it's running into. So I'm not sure that latest change just saved. Let me try this one more time. Alright, so we have an error here firing. Oh, action. We didn't define action. Okay, 1 second. You know what? We actually don't even need this action. Let's get rid of it. We're not even using it, to be honest with you. I don't even remember why I added it. So we'll re-upload that. Alright, we're not getting any more errors. That's good. Alright, sweet. So now we have the post, and you can see that React just changed the state. This is kind of modals are such a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. Like the fixed position divs never work as well as you would like. You can see my style is pushing it down from the top, and there's not even enough room to render the goddamn thing. 1 second. So that's an easy fix. Well, sort of. The fix is probably not to use a modal because it's horrible UX. They never work right, especially on smaller viewports like cell phones and things. Alright, sweet. Alright, so now let's go ahead and test this out. So we'll be posting to the server, and hopefully everything goes well. We'll say, did this go well? Alright, so we add all this stuff. We post, and it worked. You can see it redirected to post to. So that's awesome. So if we go over and we now put post 2 in our API, you can see some of the stuff went in. The actual article did not. But you can see React, that did work. The date time worked. Title did not. It must be a div problem. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. Probably a div name problem. Here's the add post modal title. Oh yeah, well, there's a typo right there. Alright, and then add post modal article. I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but we have, yeah, that's 2 screw-ups right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this one more time. I'll update that. That was just a simple div tag not being read right for our send data object that we're passing through the Ajax call. So we go over here, and remember, like I said, since it's the nav and we called it nav React, because now we're on this post page, which is a different page of our app, and we can still access, and that's why I called it nav, because it follows you around. It's another reason why, like I said, I wanted to have a very descriptive name, because I don't want to tangle up and have 2 IDs with that same name and accidentally have jQuery grab the wrong data and pass it across the wire and all that stuff. So say this is a mofo of a tutorial. Testing. Please subscribe. Alright, so now we're at post 3. So you can see that with our Django REST framework, we're actually posting all this stuff correctly, and as you can see, the author, number 1 is me. This is ID 3, title, date, article, and then the tags. And if you guys want, let me know in a video. I can do another video on how to actually take this data using the method that I described in the previous video about loading the template initially and then just passing the actual ID to the template. Like, I feel like, I'm not sure, like I feel like I may be the first one to do that. I don't know. But either way, it seems like a really efficient solution to this, because a lot of people talk about with React, like render server side and all this stuff for search engines and things, and people are like, well, you don't want React to sit there loading and have the user wait and all that stuff. Well, with this method, you don't have to worry about that, because automatically Django is going to send this bare bones HTML template, which is mainly the master page, which is a lot of code reuse that you can take advantage of. It'll send it across the wire immediately, and all it's doing is sending one tiny variable with it, which you could then take and just like I did in my component on the component did mount, where I created the actual on this component did mount, this is where I created the event system. And here, what you would do on the component did mount is you would call some sort of function. So instead of posting AJAX, you would do an AJAX call to actually do a get, and you would use that ID to make the get to this URL. So basically, all the template's going to render is a variable. This is 3. You're going to be like, oh, okay, 3. Let me make the AJAX call to post the, post and grab this data, and then build the DOM with this data. So anyway, to see a working example of something like this, let me go over to newmovies.com. So this page here is all built based on AJAX calls and things like that. But like here's the movie page. This does the exact same thing. So here is so we'll request a movie page, and it does the exact same thing. So immediately it renders the page so that something shows up, and then all this data is then populated via a secondary AJAX call, which is getting the specific movie data. And then in fact, it's actually doing even more than that, because it's making calls for each one of these movie stars in order to figure out, because each one of these movie stars has their own page, and but most of this data is coming directly from AJAX calls. But there's a lot of AJAX calls being made, and to be honest with you, a lot of ads and networks and stuff like that are being made. Like, I might even rip it out, because I'm not sure if you guys use things like AdSense, or in this case I'm using content.ad, like all these different third-party plugins that I use to make money on the site. They're all making their own AJAX requests and stuff like that. So sometimes, I mean, my speed of my site is bogged down by these third-party applications, which really sucks. You have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of whether or not you want to add something like that to your site. But that's exactly what's going on this page here. Star is just a bare bones HTML template. An AJAX call is being made with the ID to grab the data for this particular star and populate. So it's a working example of what I'm talking about, and I feel like the situation works pretty well. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please appreciate your support. Have a good night. Bye. And please comment, subscribe, and let me know if you want me to make that follow-up video to show you how to build a DOM with a JSON object that gets returned from the API. Alright, good night.